The Rylak system burned. 12 Terran diplomatic vessels, marked with the glowing sigils of peace, drifted lifeless in orbit above Rylak 4. Their hulls were torn open like crushed tin, spewing frozen bodies and flickering distress signals into the void. A single transmission made it through, fragmented, panicked, ending in a scream. President Helena Voss stood in her private war chamber, her fists clenched behind her back as the footage looped before her. Deep space static crackled across the display, punctuated by flashes of plasma fire. No Draxan ships appeared in the frame, but she didn't need visuals to know. They did this, she said quietly. There's no mistaking it. Admiral Rena Cole, standing to her right, nodded. Energy signatures matched Draxan impulse drives. They masked their heat trails, but didn't count on our deep-skin telemetry from Station Luma. How many survivors? Cole hesitated. None. The TNS Ardent Grace tried to evacuate, but her engines were targeted first. They left no one behind. Voss shut her eyes. 14 diplomats. 46 crew. 1 child, Ambassador Serrano's daughter. She exhaled slowly through her nose and opened her eyes again. Convene the Security Council. Now. The chamber on Earth's orbital bastion, Salus 1, was already filling with her closest advisors when she arrived. The digital windows shimmered with views of Earth below, a quiet, cloud-dappled blue that felt impossibly distant from what had just occurred. As she entered, the room fell into silence. Defense Secretary Malik Tor tapped the table, bringing up the wreckage feed. The audio was muted this time. No screams. We have confirmation of covert Draxan movement, he said. Fleet paths in violation of the Coalition demilitarized zone. They were waiting at Rylak cloaked. General Okoye leaned forward. This wasn't just a strike. It was an execution. Voss took her seat. And the Coalition? Paralyzed, said Foreign Minister Elora Singh. They've called an emergency session tomorrow on Diplomata. But preliminary chatter is cautious. No one wants war. Not even against the Draxans. No one except us, apparently, Okoye snapped. Voss raised a hand. Let's not become what they expect. We're not warmongers. We're measured. Measured? Tor said. They've killed our envoys. Our child diplomats. This was supposed to be sacred ground. And if we lash out blindly, we prove their propaganda right. Voss leaned in. We need proof. Undeniable, unforgeable, broadcast to every system. And when we have it... She let the sentence hang. That night, sleep was a distant memory. In the quiet of her private quarters, Voss studied the intercepted transmission again. Frame by frame. Her mind didn't drift, it sharpened. Years of peacekeeping, coalition building, compromise, it all led to this. A chime rang out. Ma'am. Cole's voice came through, urgent. We found something. 2 hours later, she was in the black archive beneath Salus 1, deep within a secure vault shielded from all external signals. The tech teams had scrubbed the recovered debris from Rylak and found it, a faint, partially encrypted signal in the drive core of the Ardent Grace. Look here, said Cole, gesturing to a string of characters. Standard Draxan command phrases, military in origin. They didn't just attack. They coordinated a precision strike using fleet-grade war codes. Voss stared. This was sanctioned. No rogue admiral. No misunderstanding. Tor shook his head. This was Vayer. High Strategos Crix Vayer. The butcher of Varkesh. The most dangerous mind in the hegemony, and now, it seemed, the author of this massacre. Prepare it for presentation, Voss said. Clean it, verify it, then put it on every channel in the galaxy. Even if the Coalition doesn't act? Asked Singh. Oh, they'll act, Voss replied. They'll have no choice. At dawn, Voss stood before the Galactic Council on Diplomata. The chamber was vast, crystalline, floating in low orbit above the neutral moon. Species from every corner of the galaxy watched her with unreadable expressions, some fearful, some curious, some coldly amused. She wore black, not for intimidation but mourning. I speak not just for Earth, she began, but for every voice silenced above Rylak. Every envoy who believed peace was still possible. She gestured, and the transmission played. The Draxan war codes. The screams. The proof. Gasps filled the room. A Mavari senator burst into tears. The Shallan delegation stood up in protest, their 6 arms raised in grief. And yet, we call for restraint, intoned the Andari speaker. The council cannot act on emotion. Voss turned to face him. Her voice was calm, but it carried like a thunderclap. This isn't emotion. This is survival. Murmurs. Debates sparked. The hall broke into procedural chaos. Across the chamber, the Draxan envoy, cold-eyed and motionless, stared back at her with open contempt. She met his gaze without blinking. Back on her shuttle, earthbound, Voss watched the council delay once more. Investigations. Committees. Weeks of diplomatic fog ahead. They've already made their choice, she murmured. Cole, standing beside her, asked, What's ours? Voss looked out at the stars. We stop waiting. The hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with false calm. President Helena Voss stood at the speaker's platform, surrounded by hundreds of alien delegates seated in tiered rows of silver and crystal. Diplomata's twin suns shone through the translucent ceiling, casting long shadows across the chamber floor. Above them all, a massive projection floated, evidence from Rylak, wreckage, decrypted Draxan war code, the last scream of a child. The silence wasn't respectful. It was political. The data is verified, Voss said, voice steady. 12 Terran vessels destroyed. Civilians targeted. These were not pirates. Not rogue actors. This was a sanctioned act of war. A ripple passed through the delegates. Some stiffened, others whispered in private channels. Voss pressed on. We ask for formal censure of the Draxan hegemony. We ask for the suspension of all trade and military exchange. We ask for collective response, now. From the upper tiers, the Andari speaker rose, translucent skin shifting color with emotion. He spoke softly, too softly. Terran President, while the incident is tragic, this council cannot act on incomplete conclusions. Voss's jaw tensed. The transmission is complete. The evidence irrefutable. The Draxan envoy stood, Ambassador Skriv, tall and armored in deep crimson scales. His voice was laced with contempt. If humans build fragile ships and wander near volatile sectors, they should expect consequences. Our fleets were nowhere near Rylak. Any code you claim to have is your fabrication. Gasps and scattered hisses echoed. Some species bristled. Others looked away. Enough, Voss said. She stepped forward, shoulders squared. Her voice sharpened. You've all seen the pattern. The Neruvan sabotage last year. The mining station collapse over Ternes V. Each time, the Draxans feigned innocence. Each time we said let's wait. Let's talk. She looked around the hall, meeting every eye she could. And now a massacre. There was no applause. Just the weight of truth. Voss gave them one last chance. Vote. The vote took 3 hours. Back in her private chamber aboard the Terran Embassy's ship Resolute, Voss stood at the viewport, watching shuttles dart between ships in orbit. Below, Diplomata's moon turned slowly, indifferent. Malak Tor entered without a word and placed a data pad on the desk behind her. They've decided. She turned. Well? Tor didn't answer immediately. His eyes said enough. Coalition Response Proposal 876 has been rejected. Motion to suspend Draxan privileges failed. No sanctions. No military support. Voss stared at him. On what grounds? Preservation of stability. She exhaled once, slowly, as if releasing a weight she'd been holding since Rylak. Andari? Neutral. Shallan? Abstained. Claim technical ambiguity in the Draxan Code. She shook her head. And they'll call us warmongers when we defend ourselves. Tor didn't reply. The next morning, Voss stood before the human delegation in the embassy command room. Cole, Tor, General Okoye, Foreign Minister Singh, and 24 senior advisors formed a semicircle around her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "They've made their decision," she said. "Now we make ours." Cole nodded. "You want Iron Dawn?" "Iron Dawn," Voss confirmed. A long pause. The room felt suddenly heavier. Iron Dawn wasn't a war plan. It was an exit clause, a centuries-old Terran contingency that, if triggered, would remove all human obligations to the Galactic Council. It meant independence. And war. Singh shifted nervously. "You know the implications. Coalition supply chains. Research access. Diplomatic stations. They're already useless," Voss said flatly. "They think by appeasing the Draxans they're buying time. They're selling us." General Okoye straightened. "What are your orders, Madam President?" Voss looked around the room. "Transmit our withdrawal from the Coalition Defense Accord. Effective immediately. Recall all Terran envoys. Activate fleet readiness across Sol, Proxima, and Helion sectors." "Any public statement?" Singh asked. Voss turned to Cole. "Patch me into a galaxy-wide feed. Every outpost. Every system. Even Draxan space." A moment later, the camera light blinked on. She stood tall, hands behind her back, in the Terran flag's shadow. "To every world listening, human or otherwise, I speak not with hatred, but with resolve." Pause. Steady breath. "We came to the stars seeking peace. We honored treaties, obeyed laws, and believed the dream of a united galaxy. But time and again, when we bled, the Council offered only silence." Her voice darkened. "We have seen enough. We have buried enough." She stepped closer, eyes locked on the lens. "Enough talking. One beat. Let the war begin." Across the stars, reactions erupted. On Earth, crowds in Unity Square roared with approval. In the Martian domes, miners raised fists. On the Terran dreadnought Indomitable, Admiral Sato issued her fleet-wide alert. In Draxan space, Strategos Valle watched the broadcast and smiled, but not from amusement. From alarm. They hadn't expected humanity to leap. Hours later, in the dark quiet of her quarters, Voss stood alone, gazing out at the stars. Behind her, news feeds pulsed, some denouncing her, others celebrating. A divided galaxy. A soft chime. "Cole," she said without turning. "We've confirmed Draxan fleet movement," Cole said. "Multiple jumps, all toward neutral sectors. Retaliation? Or preparation?" Voss nodded once. "Tell the fleet, hold line formation. Show no weakness." She turned away from the stars. "And prepare for first strike." Admiral Saran Voss had seen many kinds of silence, combat lulls, diplomatic tension, even the vacuum itself, but nothing chilled him like the Jalari's refusal to speak. The Jalari archivists, ancient, reclusive, and notoriously neutral, had long acted as arbiters in interspecies affairs. Their refusal to explain the Valari's actions only deepened the unease building inside him. He stood in the Revenant's diplomatic chamber, waiting. The room was dark, save for the pulse of holographic stars rotating above the central dais. A second later, a Jalari visage shimmered into view. It resembled a cascade of shifting crystal filaments, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid form. Its voice came in layered harmonics, calm but cold. "You were warned." Voss didn't flinch. "You owe us more than riddles. 3 billion of my people died. The Valari's fate was sealed long before the first pulse struck your colony. Then explain it. We do not interfere. You already did. You kept this from us." The Jalari shimmered, tone unchanged. "Because your kind was not ready for the truth." Voss narrowed his eyes. "Tell me." The chamber fell into a momentary pause. Then the hologram shifted, projecting an ancient map of the spiral arm, annotated in symbols older than Terran writing. "The Valari believed the coming of man marked the Age of Fire. Their prophecy declared that when humans reached the outer rim, the galaxy would face judgment. Voss's breath caught. You're saying they planned this? They believed death at your hand would fulfill the prophecy and grant them ascension, divine martyrdom. A final statement to the galaxy. They slaughtered billions to make a point. No. They became the point. Back on the command deck, Voss stood before a rotating map of known species and their borders. He stared at them, those watching, waiting, doing nothing. The Jalari think we'll trigger a galactic spiral, Cass said, standing beside him. That by acting too harshly, we'll become the very terror the Valari claimed we are. Voss didn't respond immediately. He was watching the movement of neutral fleets. Jalari scouts shifting subtly toward Terran borders. Osari traders rerouting supply lines away from Dominion space. Signals of hesitation. Of fear. They already see us that way, he said finally. Cass hesitated. Sir, if we push too hard, we could isolate ourselves. Voss turned slowly. If we don't, we'll be painted as weak. 2 hours later, he sat down with Jean and the analytics team. The Valari ritual, how far does it go? He asked. Jean pulled up files. It spans centuries. Their culture evolved around cosmic sacrifice. Dying at the hands of a stronger enemy was their ultimate expression of worth. They built a civilization to be destroyed. Yes, she said. By us. He studied the report. Somewhere in their theology, humanity had become the lit match that would ignite their great transcendence. And now that humanity had struck, the flames were spreading. Sir, Jean added carefully, we've intercepted chatter on Osari and Mycan networks. The Valari message is spreading, romanticized martyrdom against the Terran machine. Some are calling them the first fires. A cold fury settled in Voss's chest. They're becoming legends. Hours later, a small Jalari diplomatic envoy arrived on an automated courier pod. The archivists rarely sent anything physical. Inside was a single shard, encoded with a record, the Blood Nebula Accord. A pact formed 200 years ago between 6 elder species, including the Valari and Jalari. Terms: if humanity ever extended beyond the Sargos line, crossing into what the Valari deemed sacred territory, the Accord permitted any member to challenge them in defense of galactic balance. The Dominion had crossed it 9 years ago. Peacefully. With trade and colonists. And now, the consequence. Voss sat still as the weight of it hit. This wasn't random, he muttered. It wasn't even religious. It was a trap. He called a full war council. The chamber was quiet as Voss laid the Accord out before them. We were maneuvered, he said. This war was engineered to bait us into overreaction. They want us to finish what the Valari started, to fulfill the prophecy, to become the monsters. Cass leaned forward. We've already started burning their worlds. If we stop now, we look indecisive. And if we finish the job, we look like butchers, Voss replied. That's the point. They don't need to beat us. They just need us to play the villain. Rear Admiral Twin, older and more cynical, broke the silence. Then let's give them something to fear. Jean shook her head. Or we kill the myth. We can still dismantle the Valari without turning them into saints. Voss tapped the table. What if we don't just destroy their worlds? They looked at him. What if we destroy their belief? An hour later, the plan began to form. The next strike wouldn't target cities or defenses. It would target icons, temples, ancient data vaults, ritual sites passed down over centuries. Voss would leave their industry, their power cores, even their fleets untouched, for now. Instead, he would erase their history. Their language. Their gods. Not extinction. Erasure of meaning. He stood once more before the fleet. The Valari chose to die for an idea, he said. So we will deny them that. We will burn every record, shatter every shrine, delete every mention of their creed. They wanted martyrdom. He paused. We'll leave them nothing to die for. The Valari homeworld, Thalcor, hung before the Terran fleet like a defiant ember in the dark. Deep red clouds cloaked its surface, swirling above obsidian mountains and shattered plains. It was ancient, revered, untouched for millennia, even in war. Now it was surrounded. Admiral Saran Voss stood at the center of TDS Revenant's command deck, his eyes locked on the tactical display. Hundreds of Terran ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, kinetic strikers, encircled the system. They had cut off every hyperspace lane. No Valari ships had tried to escape. None had even moved. "They're not fleeing," Cass said quietly. "They're preparing to die here." "No," Voss replied. "They're preparing to be remembered." He tapped the display. "Bring the orbital cannon into position. Begin targeting the relic bands." "Yes, Admiral." The first wave of Terran fire didn't strike military sites. It didn't collapse bunkers or shred surface defenses. Instead, precision plasma lances sliced through the towering obsidian obelisks that dotted the equatorial ridge, shrines to the Valari war god Zal. Each strike triggered a pulse of crimson energy as the ancient symbols disintegrated into ash. The Valari didn't fire back. Not yet. Inside a chamber deep beneath Thalkor's capital spire, High Warlord Erix Thalkor stood beneath a sky of dying embers, staring at the shattered remains of his ancestors' names etched into the stone ceiling. The tremors above had reached even here. A voice behind him spoke. "They are breaking the soul before the body." He turned. A war priest, aged and blind, knelt beside a glowing orb, one of the last surviving memory cores of Valari scripture. "They fear the idea," Erix said, not taking his eyes from the ceiling. "They understand its power now. Will they take everything? They'll try." Back aboard the Revenant, Voss watched the Valari fleet finally activate. Hundreds of ships, dormant until now, rose from surface dry docks and orbital nests. Their configurations were erratic, some ceremonial, some obsolete, others jury-rigged with explosive charges. "They're not meant to fight," Jean said, scanning telemetry. "They're meant to die dramatically. Record their end. Intercept everything," Voss ordered. "Scramble their signals. No live feeds. I want nothing leaving this system." He turned to Cass. "We're not giving them a story." The battle was not a battle, it was a performance. Valari ships launched in synchronized arcs, shaped like ceremonial formations described in their scriptures. They ignited plasma bursts and spirals, echoing the same pattern found on Eos Prime. And as Terran kinetic rounds tore through their hulls, the Valari broadcast chants, raw, guttural, layered with ancient harmonics. They were singing their own extinction. Voss gave no counterchants, no speeches. Just commands. "Target the moon," he said, voice firm. Cass turned, startled. "Sir? The moon is uninhabited." "It's not a habitat," Voss replied. "It's a tomb. Their sacred vault. The origin archive." Jean confirmed it. The moon was hollow, filled with data cores, memory crystals, and ceremonial remains. A cultural arc. Erase it. The Dominion Spear, a Titan-class dreadnought, fired its singularity core directly into the moon's equator. The moon ruptured, first in silence, then with a roar that cracked space itself. Glowing shards of data and bones scattered across orbit like dust in a solar wind. No monuments. No graves. No afterlife. Then the call came. A wide-band, unencrypted transmission from Thalkor itself. Voss accepted. The face of High Warlord Erix Thalkor filled the central holoscreen. He stood in full battle regalia, surrounded by smoke and crumbling stone. "You have scorched our gods. Shattered our legacy. What do you think this achieves, Terran?" Voss stepped forward. "It denies you the ending you wanted. You fear myth more than death. Interesting. I fear nothing. But I understand legacy. You wanted martyrdom. We gave you silence instead." Erix smiled faintly. "You misunderstand. This is not about remembrance. It is about revelation. When others see what you have done, when they feel the void we leave behind, your truth will be clear." "No one will see it," Voss said sharply. "We've jammed every relay. No signals escape. The Valari warlord tilted his head. Then you've already lost. The screen cut out. Seconds later, Thalcor's planetary core surged. Massive eruptions split the crust open, chain detonations, triggered by deep core plasma mines. The Valari were destroying their own world. Sir, the planet is tearing itself apart, Jean reported. They've rigged it, Cass muttered. Final defiance. Voss turned away from the display. Let them. In the final moments, Terran fleet cameras captured the planet's crust collapsing inward. The red clouds vanished into a surge of light as molten fissures consumed entire continents. Voss ordered the feeds shut off. No broadcasts. No records. Thalcor died, and the stars were the only witnesses. Hours later, the Dominion fleet drifted in silence, weapons powered down. The system was dust. In his private chamber, Voss poured a glass of earth wine, untouched since before Eos. He set it on the table beside a carved shard, one of the only relics recovered before the moon's destruction. A prayer tablet. Cracked, unreadable. He stared at it for a long time. Then he placed it into the disposal flame. End of line, he whispered. The Valari were gone. Not defeated, deleted. No ruins. No archives. No language preserved for translation. Even their death cries, chanted across their burning skies, had been silenced by Dominion interference systems. It was done. Admiral Saran Voss walked alone through the gardens of Meridian, a stretch of forest and sculpted stone suspended above Earth's northern hemisphere. It was a memorial zone for wars too large for statues and too recent for textbooks. Here, there were no names. Only silence. His boots crunched over gravel paths as a soft wind stirred the trees. Below, Earth rotated in full splendor, unscarred, innocent. Billions walked beneath its skies unaware of the blood-soaked choreography he just conducted among the stars. He wasn't proud. But pride had nothing to do with it. Status report, he said aloud. The Dominion AI responded instantly, voice gentle, almost human. Fleet has returned to Sol orbit. All Valari systems confirmed inactive. No surviving vessels detected. No signal traffic. No refugee trails. No anomalies. Voss paused. No anomalies? Correct. Not a whisper of survivors. Not a ship. Not even a drone. The Valari hadn't merely died, they had refused to exist beyond their end. Hours later, in the Terran Strategic Hall, Voss faced the Prime Council. 12 seats. 11 filled. 1 empty, the diplomat killed on Eos Prime. The Chancellor, a stern woman named Arvani, nodded once. You completed the campaign as authorized. Yes, ma'am. Efficiently. Voss said nothing. She leaned forward. And now, the galaxy watches. He met her eyes. Then they'll think twice before striking again. Another counselor, older and cybernetically enhanced, tapped a finger against the armrest. The Jalari are circulating a warning. They didn't name us, but the implication is obvious. Voss raised a brow. Let them circulate. A third voice, deep and neutral. Some systems now refer to us as the Star Eaters. Even former allies are increasing their fleet readiness. Trade negotiations are stalling. They watched Eos burn and did nothing. Voss replied calmly. If they fear us now, it's a correction, not a mistake. The Chancellor gave him a long look. You understand the political price. Yes, he said. Do you regret anything? He paused. No. Only that I had to understand them after I erased them. Later, he stood on the balcony overlooking Earth's central capital, Nova Geneva. The city pulsed with life, lights, drones, glass towers reflecting the curve of the stars. A quiet hum of civilization. He turned as Cass approached, hands in her coat pockets. You could have asked for anything, she said. The council would have handed you a governorship. Or a fleet twice this size. I didn't do it for power, he replied. I know. She stood beside him. They're still talking about the moon. He didn't respond. After a moment, she asked quietly, "Was it necessary?" Voss closed his eyes for a second. "More than any strike I've ever ordered." He returned to his quarters and activated the encrypted archive. A single surviving record from the Jalari. Not Valari scripture. Not prophecy. Just an observer's final note. Let it be known, the Valari provoked humanity and were erased. No ashes remain. No legends linger. This is no war story. It is a warning. Jean sent her report that same cycle. Sociocultural ripple effects observed across neutral species. Fear outweighs outrage. Former Valari sympathizers are now quiet. No coordinated backlash detected. Mike and newsfeeds refer to humanity as the final word. Conclusion: Dominion deterrence has reached historical peak. Voss read it without reaction. Then, quietly, deleted it from his neuropad. Days later, a young officer approached him at the memorial station above Europa. Fresh uniform. Clean eyes. No scars yet. "Sir," she said, saluting. "I just wanted to say, thank you." Voss gave a curt nod. "For what?" "For making the galaxy remember." He studied her for a moment. "Be careful what you make people remember," he said quietly. "Memory outlasts truth." She blinked. "I don't understand." "You will." He turned and walked away. In the following months, no new war broke out. No revenge fleets. No grand declarations. Just silence. A galaxy paused, holding its breath. And in that breath, humanity built, faster, stronger, bolder than before. Colonies expanded. Alliances deepened, not in trust, but in necessity. No one dared provoke the Dominion again. The stars turned quietly. But never without watching. In a dim vault beneath Earth's polar archive, a memory crystal flickered into life. No labels. No classification. Inside, fragments. A Valari child singing. A homeworld crumbling. A warlord's final words. All encrypted, sealed in a vault designed never to open. Except by Voss. He stood over it, alone. His voice was almost a whisper. "Let no one say we forgot." Then he locked it away.